He bought a Chinese girl for $10 but freed her, and she asked, "Can I stay as your wife?" People argued over prices, animals were tied to wooden posts, and traders shouted to get attention. For him, it was just another hard day in a hard life. He was a quiet man, known in the area for keeping to himself. Life had taught him to expect very little. He lived alone in a small house near the fields, worked long hours, and spoke only when needed. Money was always short, but he tried to live honestly. He believed that if a person did no harm, life would somehow stay balanced. As he walked through the market, he noticed something that made him slow his steps. Near the edge of the crowd, a group of men stood around a young woman. She was sitting on the ground, her head lowered, her clothes dusty and worn. She did not look like she belonged there. Her face was pale, her eyes tired, and fear showed clearly in her posture. She did not speak, even when the men around her talked loudly. At first he thought she might be sick or lost. But the way the men spoke, the way they pointed at her, made his stomach tighten. He could not understand every word, but the meaning was clear enough. They were discussing her as if she were an object, not a human being. They mentioned money, travel, and problems she had caused. One of them laughed, saying she was more trouble than she was worth. The man felt uncomfortable and wanted to walk away. He told himself it was not his business. In places like this, people learn to look away to survive. But something stopped him. When the woman slowly raised her head, their eyes met for just a moment. There was no begging in her look, no anger, only deep exhaustion and quiet fear. That look stayed with him. He moved closer, pretending to examine goods nearby. He listened carefully. From broken phrases and gestures, he understood that the woman was from China. She did not speak the local language. She had been promised work, then taken far from home. Somewhere along the way, everything went wrong. Her documents were gone. She had no way back and no one to protect her. The men were arguing about what to do with her because she could not bring them profit. The man's heart felt heavy. He knew he was poor. He barely had enough to take care of himself. Getting involved could bring trouble. But every time he thought of leaving, he remembered her eyes. He remembered his mother telling him long ago that being human meant helping when you could, even if it cost you. One of the men finally said, with clear frustration, that they would let her go for a small amount, just to be rid of the problem. The amount they mentioned was shockingly low, $10. They said it with a laugh, as if her life was worth nothing. People nearby did not react. Some had heard worse before. The man's hands trembled slightly. $10 was not nothing to him. It was food for many days. It was money he had planned to use carefully. But he also knew that if he walked away, someone else might take her for the wrong reasons, or she might be left alone in a dangerous place. He stepped forward before he could change his mind. His voice was calm, but his heart was racing. He took the money from his pocket, counted it slowly, and held it out. The men looked surprised, then amused. They did not ask questions. They took the money quickly, eager to move on. One of them waved his hand, signaling that she was no longer their concern. The exchange was quick and quiet, but for the man, time seemed to slow. He felt no victory, only a deep sadness that such a moment could exist at all. He turned to the woman. She looked confused, fear returning to her eyes. She did not know what this meant. She had seen promises before that led to pain. He did not touch her. He crouched slightly so he would not appear threatening. Using simple gestures, he pointed away from the men and then to himself, trying to show that she was safe for now. He spoke softly, even though he knew she could not understand his words. Tone was all he had. They walked away from the market together slowly. She followed at a distance, unsure but with no other choice. The road back to his home felt longer than usual. He kept looking back to make sure she was still there. Each time she was quiet, cautious, but walking. When they reached his small house, he showed her inside. It was simple, one room, a small kitchen area, and a place to sleep. He gave her water first, then food. She hesitated, watching him closely as if waiting for a hidden condition. When he stepped back and sat on the floor, giving her space, she finally ate. Tears slipped down her face as she did, silent and steady. The man looked away, giving her privacy. He felt awkward, unsure what to do next. He had not thought this far. He only knew one thing clearly. She was not a thing to be owned, not a problem to be passed along. She was a person who had been hurt by the world. That night, he prepared a place for her to rest and took another spot for himself. There were many questions left unanswered, many dangers ahead. But for the first time in a long while, the woman slept without someone watching her as property. And for the man lying awake in the dark, he knew his life would never be as simple as before. This was not the beginning of a bargain. It was the beginning of a choice, one made quietly, without witnesses, guided only by conscience. Morning arrived softly, with pale light slipping through the cracks of the small house. The man woke before sunrise, as he always did. For a few seconds he forgot about the events of the previous day. Then he remembered and his body stiffened. He sat up slowly, careful not to make noise. The woman was awake already. She sat quietly near the wall, her hands folded in her lap. When she saw him move, she flinched slightly, then relaxed when she recognized him. Her eyes were alert but tired, as if sleep had not fully come to her. She had learned not to trust mornings. The man gave a small nod, not too friendly, not too cold. He wanted to show respect without pressure. He went outside to wash his face, giving her space. When he returned, he placed bread and warm tea on the floor between them and stepped back. He pointed to the food and then made a gentle motion with his hands, meaning she could eat freely. She watched him carefully before touching the food. She waited to see if he would say something or move closer. When he did neither, she slowly reached out and took a piece of bread. Her movements were careful, as if she expected rules she had not been told yet. But there were none. As she ate, the man sat a short distance away, fixing a broken tool. He focused on his hands, not on her. He knew that staring could feel like control. Silence filled the room, but it was not heavy. It was the kind of silence that allowed breathing. After breakfast, he stood and pointed toward the door, then to the road beyond the house. He took a small stone and drew simple pictures in the dirt: a house, a road, and a person walking away. Then he pointed to her, then to the road. His meaning was clear. She was free to leave. The woman stared at the drawings. Her brows came together in confusion. She looked at him, then at the road, then back at him. Slowly she shook her head, not in refusal but in disbelief. She stood and walked to the door, peering outside as if expecting someone to stop her. No one did. She stepped outside, took a few slow steps, then stopped. Her shoulders trembled slightly. Freedom, after a long time, can feel more frightening than captivity. She turned back toward the house, uncertain. The man did not follow her. He stayed where he was, letting her decide. After a long moment, she came back inside on her own. She did not sit immediately. She bowed her head slightly, not as a sign of obedience, but of gratitude mixed with fear. He gently shook his head, signaling that no thanks were needed. The rest of the day passed slowly. He worked outside, fixing fences and clearing weeds. She stayed near the house, watching from a distance. When he carried water, she hesitated, then came forward and lifted a bucket to help. He paused, then nodded once, accepting the help as an equal, not a duty. They worked side by side in silence. There were no orders, no expectations. If she stopped, he did not question her. If she helped, he accepted without praise or ownership. This balance was new to her. She was used to being told what to do or being ignored completely. In the afternoon, he brought out clean clothes and placed them on a bench. He pointed to them, then to her, then to a small space behind the house. He turned away immediately, making it clear she would have privacy. Her hands trembled as she picked up the clothes. Clean things had once been normal, but now they felt like a gift too large to accept easily. When she returned, wearing the fresh clothes, she looked different. Not because she was suddenly happy, but because dignity had begun to return. She stood straighter. Her eyes were still cautious, but less clouded. As the sun lowered, he prepared a simple meal. This time he gestured for her to sit closer, not too close, just enough to share warmth. He pointed to himself and said his name slowly. Then he pointed to her, raising his eyebrows in a question. She hesitated, then spoke her name softly. The sound of her own name seemed to surprise her. It had been a long time since someone asked for it without anger or demand. He repeated it carefully, practicing the sound until she nodded. A small smile touched her lips before she quickly hid it. Language was limited, but kindness filled the gaps. They used hands, drawings, and patience. When misunderstandings happened, there was no anger, only pauses, then trying again. That night he placed a small lamp near her sleeping area so she would not wake in darkness. He then moved farther away to sleep himself. Before lying down, he pointed again to the door and then to her, repeating the earlier message. Free, always free. She watched him as he lay down, turning his back to her. For the first time in a long while, she believed that his actions matched his gestures. Still, trust does not arrive in one day. It builds slowly, like light returning after a storm. Over the next few days, a quiet routine formed. He worked. She helped when she wished. Some days she stayed inside, staring out the window. Other days she followed him to the fields. He never asked questions she was not ready to answer. He never raised his voice. He never treated her presence as a burden or a claim. One afternoon, she surprised him by pointing to the road and then to him, making a questioning gesture. He understood. She wanted to know where the road led. He drew a rough map in the dirt, showing nearby places, the market, and paths to larger towns. Then he pointed far away and made a wide motion, meaning the world beyond. Her eyes filled with emotion. The world felt both near and impossible. She nodded slowly, absorbing the idea that choices still existed. That evening she spoke more than before, using broken words and gestures to share small pieces of her story. Not everything, just fragments, a promise of work. A journey that went wrong, being alone among strangers. He listened without interruption, without judgment. When she finished, he placed his hand on his chest and then on the ground, showing that here she was safe. The woman looked at him for a long time. For the first time, fear was not the strongest thing in her expression. Instead, there was confusion mixed with relief. Freedom had been given, not demanded. Respect had been shown without request. As night fell again, both of them understood something important, even without words. What had happened in the market did not define what would happen next. Ownership had been rejected. Choice had been offered. And in that simple truth, a fragile but real connection had begun to grow. Days turned into weeks, and the quiet rhythm of life continued. The woman slowly became more familiar with the sounds of the place, the wind moving through dry grass, birds calling in the early morning, and the steady footsteps of the man as he went about his work. At first, every sound had made her tense. Now some of them began to feel normal. The man noticed small changes. She no longer startled when he entered the room. She slept more deeply at night. Sometimes, when she thought he was not looking, she would stand at the door and watch the sky, as if reminding herself that it was real and still open to her. They spoke little, but understanding grew. He showed her how to plant seeds and how to tell when the soil needed water. She watched carefully, learning by doing. When her hands grew tired, he would quietly take over without comment. When she succeeded, he would nod once as if to say it was natural for her to learn. One afternoon, rain fell suddenly. They were far from the house and the path turned slippery. She nearly fell, but he caught her arm just in time. For a brief moment, she froze. Her breath became short and fear flashed across her face. He realized too late how sudden the contact must have felt. Immediately, he released her and stepped back, raising his hands to show there was no danger. He spoke softly, his voice calm and low. She stood still for a moment, then slowly nodded. The rain washed the dust from the air, and they continued walking, leaving more space between them. That small moment reminded both of them that healing did not move in a straight line. That evening, she surprised him by bringing a bowl of food she had prepared herself. It was simple, but she placed it in front of him with care. He looked at it, then at her, unsure how to respond. He bowed his head slightly and ate. She watched closely, waiting to see if she had done something wrong. When he finished and smiled gently, her shoulders relaxed. Later that night, she sat near the lamp and traced shapes in the dust on the floor. He noticed she was restless. Without speaking, he brought out old paper and a piece of charcoal. He placed them beside her and stepped away. She stared at them for a long time before picking up the charcoal. At first, her drawings were simple lines. Then shapes appeared: mountains, a small house, a path. Finally, she drew a figure standing alone. Her hand paused, then added another figure nearby. She pushed the paper slightly toward him. He understood that she was trying to speak through pictures. He did not ask questions. He simply nodded and placed the paper safely aside, as if her story mattered and deserved care. Over time, she shared more. Some evenings she would point to herself, then to the road, then shake her head. Other times she would point to the sky and press her hand to her chest, as if remembering something far away. He listened with patience, never pushing for details. He knew that some memories needed time before they could be spoken. The man, too, began to share small parts of his life. He showed her a faded photograph of his parents. He pointed to the fields and then to his chest, explaining that this land was all he had known. He spoke of loss in simple words, of learning to live alone, of accepting silence. She listened closely, seeing that pain was not something only she carried. They laughed for the first time on a cool morning. A goat had escaped its rope and ran through the yard, causing confusion. She laughed suddenly, covering her mouth as if surprised by the sound. The man laughed too, a quiet sound that felt strange to him. For a moment the past loosened its grip. As trust grew, she began to walk farther from the house on her own. Sometimes she returned quickly, sometimes later. Each time he greeted her the same way, without worry or questions. She noticed this. Knowing she could come and go without being watched made her steps lighter. One day she fell ill with a fever. Her strength faded and fear returned to her eyes. Illness had once meant danger. The man stayed nearby but did not crowd her. He brought water, cool cloths, and simple medicine. He checked on her often but always gently, always asking with his eyes before touching her hand. During the long night she spoke in her sleep, words he could not understand. Her voice sounded lost and young. He sat quietly, keeping the lamp low, making sure she was not alone. When morning came and her fever eased, she looked at him with new understanding. Care had been given without control. When she was well again, she did something unexpected. She knelt on the floor and bowed deeply. The man felt uncomfortable and quickly motioned for her to stand. He pointed to both of them and then made a flat motion with his hand, meaning equal. He wanted no debt between them. She stood slowly, studying his face. Then she nodded, accepting his message. From that day, something shifted. Gratitude was no longer heavy. It became lighter, turning into mutual respect. As weeks passed, her language improved. She learned small words. He learned a few from her. Their conversations remained simple but meaningful. They spoke of daily things, whether food, work, but sometimes silence said more. One evening, as they sat outside watching the sunset, she suddenly pointed to the horizon and then to him. Her expression was serious. He understood she was thinking about the future, about choices she still had to make. He took a stick and drew two paths in the dirt, separating and then meeting again. He pointed to her, then to both paths, showing that every road was open. She watched closely, then placed her hand gently on one path. Not firmly, not finally, just resting there. He did not react. He only nodded, giving space to the moment. That night, as stars filled the sky, both of them lay awake, thinking. Pain had not disappeared, but it no longer ruled every thought. Trust had not erased fear, but it had softened it. They were two people who had been shaped by loss, now learning how to share space without taking freedom away. In that quiet place, far from the market where everything had begun, something real was forming. Not ownership, not obligation. Just two lives slowly finding balance side by side, guided by patience, kindness, and the understanding that healing takes time. Change did not arrive suddenly. It came quietly, like the shift in air before a new season. The woman became more confident in her movements and her voice. She no longer hesitated before speaking, even if the words came out broken. The man listened carefully, never correcting her harshly, always encouraging her with patience. One morning he told her, using simple words, drawings, and gestures, that he wanted to help her reach a nearby town where officials could help her contact people from her country. He showed her the road on the ground again, this time drawing larger buildings and many people. He pointed to her, then to the drawing, and then back to the house, making it clear that the choice was hers. She listened quietly. Her face did not show fear, but it did show something deeper: conflict. She nodded slowly, understanding his meaning. That day she said very little. She helped with chores, cooked the evening meal, and sat quietly after sunset, staring into the distance. The man noticed the change. He wondered if he had caused pain by bringing up the future. But he also knew that real care meant not keeping someone close out of comfort. Freedom had to stay real, even when it was difficult. Over the next few days he prepared carefully. He gathered papers he had saved, small savings, and food for travel. He asked people in the nearby area about safe ways to reach the town. He did all of this openly, never hiding his actions. He wanted her to see that this was not a plan made behind her back. The woman watched him closely. Each preparation made her chest feel heavier. She had dreamed of escape for so long, but now that escape was possible, it did not feel simple. The world beyond the house felt large and uncertain. The world inside the house felt small but safe. One evening, as they shared a simple meal, she suddenly put down her bowl. She looked at him directly, her eyes steady. She pointed to the road, then shook her head. Then she pointed to the house and finally to herself. Her hands trembled slightly as she searched for words. He stayed silent, giving her time. Slowly she spoke. Her voice was quiet but clear. She said she understood that she could leave. She said she was thankful for his help. Then she paused, pressing her hand against her chest as if steadying her heart. With effort, she formed a question she had been holding inside for days. She asked if she could stay. The man was surprised. He did not answer immediately. He searched her face carefully, not wanting to misunderstand. He asked gently, using gestures and simple words, if she meant staying until travel was possible or staying by choice. She shook her head slowly. She pointed to him, then to herself, then placed her hands side by side. Her meaning was clear, even if the words were not perfect. She was asking for something deeper, something lasting. The room felt very still. The man felt a mix of emotions: shock, concern, and responsibility. He did not feel pride or victory. Instead, he felt the weight of her words. He knew how easily gratitude could be confused with attachment. He knew how important it was that her choice be truly free. He stood up and walked a short distance away, then turned back. He pointed to the door again, then to the road, repeating the message he had shown her many times: free, always free. He touched his chest and shook his head, showing that she owed him nothing. She listened carefully. Tears filled her eyes, but she did not look frightened. She nodded again and again, as if to show she understood. She spoke slowly, choosing each word with care. She said she had thought deeply. She said she had been alone before, even among people. Here she felt seen. She felt respected. She felt safe. He asked her to take time. He told her as clearly as he could that she should not decide while fear of the outside world was still fresh. He suggested waiting, learning more, and seeing other places. He wanted her choice to remain strong even when comfort was removed. She agreed. The question was not asked again for many days. Life returned to its quiet routine, but something had changed. A new awareness existed between them. They spoke more openly. They laughed more easily. But the man stayed careful, keeping boundaries clear. They made the journey to the nearby town together. The woman was nervous, but she walked with steady steps. People stared, but the man stayed close without holding her. In the town, he helped her speak with people who could guide her. He stepped back when needed, letting her voice lead. The process was slow. Papers took time. Messages had to be sent. The woman learned that returning home would not be quick or easy. She absorbed this information calmly, without panic. The world no longer felt like it was closing in on her. After returning from the town, she was quiet for 2 days. On the third evening, she spoke again. This time, her voice was steady. She said she was thankful for the chance to choose. She said her feelings had not changed. She said she did not want to stay because she was afraid to leave, but because she wanted to build something real. The man listened. He did not interrupt. When she finished, he took a long breath. He told her he respected her choice, but that respect also meant honesty. He said life with him would be simple and sometimes hard. There would be no promises of comfort or ease. Only shared effort and equal standing. She smiled softly and nodded. She said she understood. Simple life did not scare her. Losing dignity did. That night neither of them slept much. The future felt close now, no longer distant, but there was no rush, no celebration, only quiet acceptance that something important had been spoken. In the days that followed, they discussed practical things, work, space, responsibilities. Everything was discussed openly. No assumptions were made. Each decision was shared. What mattered most was that the question had been asked freely and the answer was being shaped with care. Whatever path they would take next, it would not begin with control or obligation. It would begin with choice, spoken clearly and honored fully. Time continued to move forward, steady and patient. After everything had been said, life did not suddenly change its shape. The days still began with early light and ended with quiet evenings. Work still needed to be done. Meals still needed to be prepared. But inside both of them, something had settled into place. The man remained careful. Even after her choice, he treated her with the same respect as before. He did not act as if anything was owned or decided forever. He believed that real commitment was shown through actions over time, not words spoken once. The woman noticed this. It gave her comfort. Her choice did not trap her. Instead, it gave her strength. She moved through the house and fields with more confidence. She spoke more, laughed more, and sometimes even teased him gently when he was too serious. These small moments felt natural, not forced. They decided together to take proper steps, slowly and openly. They spoke with elders and officials, explaining everything clearly. Nothing was hidden. The past was acknowledged, not erased. The woman made sure her voice was heard in every conversation. The man stood beside her, not in front of her. Some people were surprised, some were doubtful, but the way they treated each other spoke louder than explanations. There was no fear in her eyes, no control in his actions, only balance. As weeks passed, the woman continued learning the language. The man helped when he could. Sometimes they laughed at mistakes. Sometimes they sat in silence when words failed. Silence no longer meant loneliness. It meant comfort. One evening, while fixing the roof together, she slipped slightly. This time, when he reached out to steady her, she did not freeze. She looked at him and smiled, nodding as if to say it was all right. That simple moment showed how far she had come. She also began to share more of her past, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. She spoke of her childhood, of small joys, of dreams she once thought were gone forever. The man listened carefully, holding each story with respect. He did not compare pain or offer solutions. He simply stayed present. In return, he shared more of himself. He spoke of his fears, his doubts, and the nights he wondered if he would always be alone. Saying these things out loud felt strange but freeing. He realized that strength did not mean silence. Their bond did not grow from grand gestures. It grew from shared effort, carrying water together, planning meals together, facing problems side by side. When disagreements came, they did not raise voices. They paused, thought, and tried again. One day, the woman received news that it would still take a long time before returning to her homeland would be possible. She listened calmly, then folded the letter carefully. That chapter of her life was not closed, but it no longer controlled her present. That evening, she sat with the man under the open sky. She told him she was grateful, not for being saved, but for being respected. She said that for the first time in a long while, she felt like her future belonged to her. He nodded, feeling something warm settle in his chest. He realized that his small decision in the market had grown into something much larger than he had imagined. Not because he was a hero, but because he had chosen to see another person as human. When they finally made a public commitment, it was simple. No celebration, no display. just two people agreeing to walk forward together with honesty and equality. The woman stood tall, her voice steady. The man stood beside her, his head held high, not out of pride but peace. Life did not become easy after that. There were still hard days, missed harvests, and moments of worry. But now those burdens were shared. When one grew tired, the other carried more. Sometimes the woman would stand at the edge of the fields, looking toward the road. The man never stopped her or questioned her. He knew that freedom did not disappear after a choice. It had to be renewed every day. And she always came back, not because she had nowhere else to go, but because she wanted to. Their story did not spread because it was dramatic. It spread quietly through whispers and observation. People noticed the respect, the calm, the balance. They saw that what began with a small amount of money had ended with something priceless, dignity restored. In the end, the story was never about buying or freeing. It was about recognizing humanity when it was easiest to look away. It was about offering choice when control was expected. And it was about two broken paths meeting, not out of need but out of will. That was how their life continued, not perfect, not simple but real. And for both of them, that was more than enough.